selected.
So no one can actually see this at the moment, or can they?
Start recording. Right. Good afternoon, guys. Just a quick check, sound check, and making sure everything is working. So. Right. Yeah, that's fine. Great. So, Peter from the First Principle, we are doing today a quick presentation for you. I've got Glenys Bridges here with me today, and we will hopefully give you some value today and something to take home with you and learn about management, staff management. Yes?
Absolutely, about staff management, yes.
Yeah, so I will pass it on to Glenys in a second, but I just wanted to let you know we are doing 2 more events soon. One is all about Facebook ads marketing for dental practices, and the other one is about new CQC inspection regime. So keep an eye on that on Facebook and social media, and just join in, tune in, and enjoy the presentations, learn something new every day. So what I will do is just swap over to the presentation now, where Glenys will be able to go through the slides and give you a good introduction to that. Right, okay. So, quick introduction now, Glenys. Tell us all about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, how you can give value, how you can help, and what you're going to be talking about today.
Okay, well, I've been training in dental practice management now since 1992, so it's quite a long time.
Right. Okay.
And I work with a lot of people from all sorts of practices, and basically I work with them to teach them management techniques so that the difficult situations that are personal can be dealt with far more on a reasoned cognitive level rather than the emotional level.
Yes.
And that's very much what we're doing here. We're looking at some techniques, we're thinking about how they fit into all the sorts of situations that occur when you've got staff that aren't performing the way that you want them to do.
Right, yeah, I think it's very important that you remove the emotional aspects when it comes to work. I mean, not 100%, but yeah, you do have to remove that aspect when it comes to conflict as well. So yeah, you're absolutely spot on. So you obviously provide training like this?
I provide training, consultation. Yeah. Basically, that's what I do, for practice management.
Good. Okay, so shall we move on with the presentation? You can go through your slides.
Okay. Well, first of all, to say that the staff are the biggest investment within the business, and they're the most easily disrupted investment as well. And there are so many things that can create problems that make people not be motivated, makes them not want to work and not want to do their best. So what we want to do here is try and get an understanding of what they are and what management can do to prevent that from happening. Anybody that works in a chaotic practice will run out of patience at some stage with management.
I think the Facebook groups are perfect examples of that.
Totally.
That's why we obviously there to help yourself, myself, and it's great to see members within the groups interacting and helping each other without judging each other, because obviously, that's tricky one. How do you ask the questions if you don't know? So yeah, we can see that every day, so that's why it's important maybe to have some training like with someone like yourself.
Absolutely. Okay. And when you employ somebody, you pick the person that you think is most suited to your practice. The important thing then is to bring them on in line with what you need and what you want from them, not to completely confuse and confound them so that they get to the point that either they continue working unhappy or they decide to work somewhere else. And hopefully, looking at the things that we're going to talk about today, if you've got difficulties with staff, you'll be able to diagnose what the problem is.
Recognise them quickly enough,
and then think about very straightforward but ways that aren't going to get you in trouble with an employment tribunal.
Exactly, yeah, that's something I think many people are stressing about, employment tribunal. Can I do this or can I do that? Is that going to land me in court explaining myself? Why did I do that? So hopefully you'll have recipe to avoid that.
Absolutely. And the more structured you are in what you do and the better your record keeping is, if it does get to the point that you've got solicitors' letters saying you've done this and you've done that, then the more they're going to look at your records, look at the way that you've approached it, and realise that actually what you've done is completely in line with employment law, so there's nothing there for them. So what we'll do to begin with is just set out the aims and objectives of this particular presentation, which is really to highlight what do staff need, what are their deployment needs. They need to know what's wanted from them, and we'll look at that and we'll talk about it. We'll consider how staff support measures contribute to team development, because the way that you give people opportunities to grow and develop is going to influence the results that they produce for you. And we'll think about the measures to manage staff effectiveness. Again, huge investment, you want it to work for you. Now, as with other aspects of your training, and particularly of your compliance, it's always really important to know what you're doing and how it links to CQC regulations.
Yeah, everyone is stressing about CQC, so...
Absolutely. And, do you know, it's not the beginning and the end of the world, CQC, because very often the things that you should be doing because it's good practice.
I always say to practices, obviously working on a slightly different side, but I always say to practices, just forget about CQC. You're not doing that for CQC, you're doing that for yourself, for your business, for your staff. CQC is just there to be there, to making sure if you do something wrong, then obviously they'll be able to put you right. But at the end of the day, you want to do everything right in the beginning. So
right.
Forget CQC, just do it for yourself.
But use the CQC as guidance,
exactly.
Because Regulation 17, good governance, is all about the well-led aspects that we're talking about today. And Regulation 18, staffing, again, very much about making sure that people have got clear direction, they know what's expected of them, they've got the right qualifications, they've got the right resources, and it really just focuses your mind for what, really, if you'd have sat down and thought about it, you would have made for yourself. You probably would have been able to write the regulations yourself once you've been in management for any length of time.
That's true, yeah.
They are very logical. But also, of course, we've got the GDC principles that we need to think about when we decide how we do things within the practice.
Yeah.
And with the new ECPD that's coming in shortly, with a very different emphasis on planning and knowing which are the principles, the training, the CPD that you're doing linked to, then again, here we're going to look at Principle 6 in particularly, work with colleagues in a way that are in patients' best interests. And it's clearly in patients' best interests that people know what they're doing and they've got the time and the resources to do it.
Yeah.
So that would be a huge tick in that box. And maintain and develop professional knowledge and skills. Of course, that's going to be for staff development. It's also going to be for non-registered people as well, for their development as well. Because although the GDC hasn't got any jurisdiction, it would be madness to work within a profession that's got structured guidance and ignore it just because you're not registered.
Because you're not registered, yeah. Well, absolutely. That's interesting. Okay.
So basically, we'll think about the key lines of inquiry and we'll link the things that we do to those so that we can be sure that treatment and all elements of care are safe, effective, responsive, caring, and probably the biggest focus of today.
Yeah, well led. Yeah, and that's going to comes down from good management and communication and staff management. So yeah, well led.
Absolutely, and that all begins with somebody within the practice starting off with a clear vision of what the practice is all about.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting for things to happen and responding to them.
It needs to come from the top. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't,
then everyone will do whatever they want to do, I would imagine.
And it's the difference between leadership and management, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so many practices have got lots and lots and lots of leadership, wonderful ideas, staff meetings where people say, oh, we're doing this and we're doing that.
Yeah.
And then at the next staff meeting, nothing's happened.
Nothing's happened, yeah.
And that's because there's no management to take that leadership and make it happen.
Yeah.
So it's being really clear that leadership is about the direction, the inspiration, the ideas and the energy. And then the management is taking all of that and making it into something that makes a difference,
something real, yeah.
that happens. Absolutely. And so therefore it means, in our context now, it means making sure that people have got the right skills initially when you employ them and ongoing once they're within the practice. And those skills are transferable from other areas sometimes. Sometimes you may have somebody coming on reception that comes from a good marketing background.
Yeah.
And
so it doesn't have to necessarily be a person that worked in a dentistry for years. It could be someone completely from different environment. But as long as they've got a good set of skills, there's nothing to stop them really to work for you in a practice.
Absolutely.
Obviously, then qualifications would be another thing that you have to have a look at. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that brings it along too, because the fact is there's all the dental knowledge in the world in the practice already.
Yeah, exactly. So again, nobody will stop you to transfer the knowledge, to pass the knowledge to your employees. Once they're in, as long as they've got a good set of skills. I always, my approach was I can always teach people what to do and how to do it, but as long as they've got skills and they're willing to learn.
That's right. So that knowledge can be transferred, it can be cascaded throughout the whole of the team, and those skills are then cascaded throughout the team, which makes the new person really feel like they've contributed something. They can really start to own the practice, own their work in the practice,
exactly,
as they can see the benefits of it, and that's motivating.
So how do you? I'm not sure if you're going to cover that later on in slides, but what do you think? Cause my biggest concern, well, not concern, but what I've noticed in the past, that people work in places, not necessarily just dental practices, but anyway, and they're afraid to share their knowledge because they think, well, I'll lose my job if I share my good knowledge. So how do you encourage staff to share the knowledge?
That's a lack of trust in the whole organisation, really, isn't it? Thinking they're going to drain all my best knowledge and then they're going to kick me out.
Yeah.
I think you've got to build trust and you've got to build support and you've got to value people so that they know that
team building is the key there.
Absolutely, it's team building, and it's respectfulness, and it's the way that people talk to and about one another within the
something
practice.
About I think I mentioned that today. Just when you arrive, saying thank you for things actually goes a long way. Simple stuff like just say thank you for giving me the knowledge, or just. I think that this is a magic word, really, saying thank you. So if you can do that in your practice every day, I think that's going to go a long way as well.
Yeah, I mean,
simple things.
It's almost an old-fashioned concept, isn't it? Saying thank you, but that is such a loss.
I think it is. Yeah, it's shame. Like people don't say thank you anymore as much as they used to.
No, it saddens me when dentists have to be asked to thank their nurse at the end of the session. And
it should be group hug in a dental practice.
Well, whatever they're comfortable with, but just a recognition of the effort.
A recognition of the effort, but not just once in a while, not every 3 months, not once a year bonus. I think it should be more of a daily exercise to say, look, that's what we've done well. That was the target. That's what we're achieving the target. Let's do it. Yeah. And I think that's going to motivate everyone in the practice.
Totally. And when you know that people will give you the accolades when you do things right, it makes any feedback that is something that you need to do better much more valuable and balanced as well. People will say they only tell me what I'm doing when I'm doing it wrong. Nobody ever says anything when I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
That's a big no-no, really. If you're thinking about creating staff that really want to be there and do the best for you, then you need much more balance than that.
Yeah. I mean, think about how happy team would actually, apart from dynamics of the team and how you manage the business, that will obviously have a happy team will have effect on that. But for the marketing perspective, we're going to, in a couple of days' time, we're going to do a marketing presentation. If you've got a happy team and you show that all over social media, come on, people out there looking at you, positive things bring positive things or attract positive. So if you can just tell people out there that your team is great and you really treat your team very well, your business will improve as well as a business.
Absolutely. You don't actually have to say that because it will shine through.
Yeah, no, you don't, exactly. You don't have to say, you just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for an example, I went into a practice in quite a poor area, and it was a very NHS ordinary practice.
Yeah.
And there was a table of magazines in the middle of the room, and there were chairs around the outside. Now, sadly, there was a man in a wheelchair, and the wheelchair had just been pushed into the room. Yeah. And everybody that needed to come in or out of the room had to manoeuvre around the wheelchair. And the man sitting in the wheelchair was very embarrassed by that, not surprisingly.
Yeah.
And it just seemed to me, if only the receptionist had stacked a couple of those chairs around the centre side of the room, that wheelchair could have been moved in line with everything else.
Right.
And that man would not have been uncomfortable. But that receptionist needed to be told.
Yeah.
Now, if she was in the sort of team that genuinely cared about people inside and outside of the team, she wouldn't. If it was her mother or father or someone she cared about, she would have seen it immediately. But because it was a patient, she didn't.
It was a number, basically, on that day.
A person that was coming for treatment.
Yeah.
Now, that's the marketing, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
You know, you can say we look after our patients well. No point in saying that. Just do it, and there's no need to say it.
Yeah, you don't need to say it. You just simply do it. Just do it. That's exactly, so...
And it brings you straight back to self-deployment again, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Straight back to self-deployment. So let's think about the structured leadership then that creates the sort of staff that empathise, that can see the patient's perspective and without having to be told will do things that make the patient's journey much more comfortable. Okay, so it begins with the strategic management. That's the leadership. That's the people at the top of the organisation saying our vision is that for each patient that comes here, not only do they get fabulous dentistry, but they're actually treated extremely well and they're thought about and considered.
Something, well, I call it mission statement,
In the mission statement, in the vision,
mission
all of that
statement.
Sort of
dentists out there, practice owners out there, just make sure you've got really good mission statement. You make sure if you lay the foundations right, I think everything will follow after that.
That's it. When you've got the right attitude at the top, the benefits are everywhere throughout the practice.
Exactly, yeah.
And it links in then to emotional intelligence, which is what we're talking about with that receptionist that didn't see the thing. Now, IQ we're all particularly well versed with, but emotional intelligence is something that is much more difficult to quantify, but quite easy to measure.
Right, yeah.
And when you're interviewing for staff and you're choosing the right people, definitely screen for emotional intelligence.
How would you do that then?
Ask them questions at the interview about situations they may never have actually experienced, but think about how it would feel to be in that situation. Now, some people might think I'm a bit mad, but there is a particular question that I use, and that is to test emotional intelligence, of course. Just imagine if, during the night while you were sleeping, the strangest thing happened, and when you woke up in the morning, you woke up and you got a great big lion's tail.
Right.
Now, no one's ever experienced that.
No.
How would you imagine that would affect the way that you went about your day-to-day life?
Okay.
And some people would say, oh, it'd be awkward to put your clothes on. And other people might say, oh, you'd have to be careful if you were warming yourself by the fire. You'd have to be careful how you got into a car. Because they've empathised. They've never experienced that, but they can understand how it would feel if that happened. That's the empathy thing. And if they can empathise in that way, they can empathise in the ways that pardon me, you need them to in the practice.
Just grab a drink, have a coffee.
We're doing too much talking here.
Yeah, we're doing too much talking, guys, so let's have a drink.
And in a real situation, I was in a bus queue in London some time ago now, and the queue was long, and there was a very busy road, and there was a mother with a child of just a few people in front of me. And I thought to myself, you've got two children, you've got shopping, you've got pushchair, you're going to have your hands full when the bus comes. And I was quite a long way back in the queue. Well, when the bus came and she sort of moved towards getting on there was a young man. He was in a hoodie, and the hoodie was up. It was a cold day anyway. And he immediately reached forward to take the child off her. Now, what he'd thought was, she needs a hand. But what he hadn't thought is what a horrible experience for a mother to have the child taken away from her.
Yeah.
Basically, he just got it wrong, didn't he?
Yeah.
He wanted to help. The way that he helped was just completely the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And she
at least he tried. You know, many people
try.
would stand there and do nothing. So
many people
fair play,
do.
you know, he at least tried. But yeah, again, it's the emotional aspect there.
Yeah.
Better grab some bags with something and help her.
Yeah, or just ask,
or ask
her,
the question,
can I take the pushchair for you or something?
Yeah.
But the point is, he'll probably never help again, because the reaction that he got there, which was absolutely hysterical, mother and lots of people in the queue virtually accusing him of being an evil person.
Yeah.
You know, but the point is that sometimes emotional intelligence needs to be tempered with something more of life experience, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And that's why very often in a practice, just having some sort of a session where you discuss the things that have happened and how the patient's reacted and what you would do differently, which is reflective review, which is part of the whole new CQC and certainly the ECPD thing.
Yeah.
So that you say, well, yeah, that did work. It was a good idea to do that. But if we'd have done that, it would have been even better. Because we can always think after the event, oh, if only I'd said.
Yeah.
Done. Now, what you're actually doing there is building your team on past experiences.
Use the experience, yeah. Like I said, no, I think, again, going back to marketing for a second, there was someone posted in a group saying, you know, how to remove bad reviews and from your Facebook page. And it's like, you don't do that. But actually, guys said, well, sorry, I need to, well, that's not what I was trying to say. It was the bad review in terms of someone is posting abusive reviews, saying, you know, racist things and things like that, which is fine. You might want to remove them, but when it comes to bad review, you know, again, use that experience to make your service better. So in a practice, if you've got a unhappy patient, you've not said something that you're supposed to do, say, then sit in your staff meeting, actually go for that, say, how can we make that better? And then from my engineering, now we're going to put engineering in dentistry. From my engineering experience, Kaizen was a massive thing. Continuous improvement, never stop improving.
Absolutely.
That's always my goal, really. Whatever I do, always think about how to improve that. So if you apply that Kaizen approach, and I've been on the presentations and with NHS actually while I was working for NHS hospital around the corner from here, there was a random presentation from British Airways in NHS hospital from a pilot. You know, and that, again, standard operations, you know, how do we do things and standardize things? So it will allow everyone to know what to do in certain events. But the another thing was, well, if you make a mistake, you learn from it and put something in place not to make the same mistake again. So, yeah.
But what you have to have is the sort of environment that people are comfortable to talk about their mistakes. Significant event analysis is an absolutely fabulous thing to do, but there's an awful lot of getting people ready for that. Encouraging
people to be open.
Yeah.
It's difficult. People very often go to the mouth saying, I'm not going to say that because
it makes me look bad.
Makes me look bad, and people don't want to look bad. So
that's right. And that's another argument, slightly going off the track to something further on, but in linking pay with appraisals. You know, no one's going to come to an appraisal and say, I think I need to be better at, which is what they should be doing, really.
Yeah,
if it's
that's the appraisal.
but, you know, at the end of the day, if you're saying you're not great at everything, that you're not the most wonderful thing in the world, are they going to give you a pay rise? And you've got all of that sort of going on at the same time, which is helpful. So it's communication with your staff as well.
Yeah.
Find out what's it like to work here. What should we do more of? What don't we do enough of?
What you don't like.
Yeah.
What you like. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there things that we do that actually would be a better idea if we did differently? Because when people are actually right up doing it day in, day out, they've got such a different perspective than the management.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Back to manufacturing into the big factories. It used to be Leyland factory in Birmingham, massive, took up most of one side of the city, but the people on those work lines were just doing drudgery, doing it, repetitive work. But there were a lot of suggestion boxes there. Now, I'm sure a lot of what they took out of them were not workable, but occasionally they would get an idea from somebody that on those about the work that they're doing that was absolutely revolutionary. And the way that they would reward people would be as a percentage of the profit that's made as a result of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And some people that did actually just see something that was blindingly obvious to them that nobody else had seen.
Interesting. You see, again, it's all about dentistry, but again, from my engineering experience, what I used to do, I was part of Kaizen team, and I was part of continuous improvement. So we had a competition every year in a place where we formed a couple of teams, 3 or 4 teams, and we had to come up with a project. How we're going to improve quality, how we can improve costs. So we go through that, and we had to do something, project. So maybe practices could have that sort of competition, teams of 2s, and come up with something.
Yeah,
how are we going to improve?
Do, you know?
Yeah.
I think some of the trailblazers certainly do, and maybe some of the others will start to recognise the value because they're being driven towards quality through CQC, which of course comes from the Edwards-Deming theories that inspired Kaizen in Japan in the first place, isn't it? Yeah. So that's all great stuff. So all of that really, those top 3 points are about strategic management really. They're about the choices that the leadership make, and they then need to set goals. Some of the things that we're talking about here would be goals, wouldn't they? Budgets. Yeah. Because, you know, that money tree that the government may have doesn't exist in most practices.
No.
The philosophy of the practice, you know, where we come from, what we do, and the vision, which will be in the mission statement. Yeah. And if you haven't got an up-to-date mission statement, go back to your statement of purpose for the CQC, because, again, that sets out goals and mission, etc. Yeah. So just knowing exactly where you need to take your practice is very reassuring for your staff.
Yeah. Well, if they know where you're going, they go with you.
Yeah.
If they don't know, then they're probably going to disappear very quick if they don't share the same dream, really. So, again, recruitment should be... That's our mission statement. Do you like that? During the interview, if you would do that, you know, what do you think? Do you actually, could you work with that? Would you like to be part of that? And that's going to make them maybe, that might be more attractive employment place if you're recruiting people.
Totally. It will be a more rewarding place to work if you're completely in line with what the practice is all about.
Yes.
Okay. So, we've set a benchmark, haven't we? We've thought about what do we do. Well, let's have a look at the management now. And what I want to do is look at Henry Farrell's functions of management. Now, this comes from manufacturing, and it came at the beginning of the last century, but it's as relevant now as ever it was. And it means that when you manage something, if at the end of the management process, be it people or things, you look at it and think that was more than I was trying to do. If you actually can track back through these stages of the management functions, you can see where your weakest link is and you can do something about it. So, of course, we're talking about staff development, so let's put this into that context here. But the truth of the matter is it applies to anything that you're managing.
Yeah.
So it starts off with the planning, and the planning is where you start with the end in mind. To actually try to do anything without knowing what it would look like when it was finished in the way that you would ideally want it to be is really not a particularly sensible way to go about anything in business. So let's say the planning is to create a stable dental team that works well together and gives patients excellent dental care. That seems to me like the sort of thing that most practices would be.
Yeah.
But actually you're taking it beyond something that's in here and in here to something that's actually, this is what we're trying to do. And you can sit in a staff meeting and you can say, why do we come here?
Yeah.
5 days a week. Well, this is what we think we're coming here for. Is anybody coming for any other reason than that? Now, of course, they're going to say they're coming to be paid because we can't get away from the fact that people have got bills to pay.
Exactly.
But ultimately, if you're doing all of those things,
you'll get paid.
It will follow.
Yeah.
You know.
So maybe actually changing the staff attitude, saying, look, forget the pay. The pay is there. It will be there as long as you're here and you do this. That's what we want you to do. And the pay is there. It will be always there for you as long as we all do these things.
Yeah. The people that have an amazing dental experience pay their bill.
Yeah.
The people that make a complaint, you might have to fight for that money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, that planning is starting off crystal clear, really understanding what it is that you're all about, because then you can organise it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we make that happen? Who does what?
Yeah.
What training do they need?
Who does when, what, when and how, I usually say. Yeah.
What policies and procedures do we need to make that happen? And of course, policies and procedures, are there a lot of people, oh my goodness with them, actually are the backbone of decision making, because it gives you consistency and fairness, rather than making a decision in the heat of the moment dependent upon who the people involved are or what your particular needs are at a particular time. So all this organising really is getting together that really firm management that is going to make things happen.
Something we touched on before, saying employment tribunal. I mean, that's where that would probably take you out of that situation. I mean, that was our procedure policy. We've done everything that we listed in the policies. According to our policies, it's nothing to argue about. So they can't say this is basically against me only. Yeah, so you know, everyone else is treated differently. No, actually, everyone is treated the same way.
Equality and diversity with intelligence. I mean, we're not creating a Jobsworth and robots and people such as that.
Sure,
I mean, their guidance and they're setting standards and benchmarks, but obviously some intelligence is needed sometimes as well. But once you're organised like that, then the commanding starts. And this is where every policy and procedure should be backed up with working instructions.
Yeah.
Now, not for the people that have been doing the job for 10, 15 years and know it's back to front and inside out. It's for the people that come after them.
Yeah, who join their business.
So that all the things that are so fabulous about them are actually kept in the business when they're no longer in the business. So the commanding is really about that clarity. So it's not generally you do this, you clean the instruments. It's actually you do this and this and this. Yeah. And that is going to be very, very much supported by HTMO 105, isn't it?
Yeah.
And all the record keeping and everything that goes alongside that. But, you know, that is the commanding side of it. Get that absolutely clear. And then at the end of the day, if you were to say to somebody, have you done that correctly? There would be absolutely no doubt in their mind what correctly looks like.
Well, exactly. What do you mean correctly? Yeah.
And they could then compare what they've done correctly. Or so too could any manager who was unhappy with the standard of their work. They could say, well, look, this is where you're going wrong. Yeah. Because it's there, it's clear, and it's anybody can see that.
And you can address that in early stages and get that right, and avoid possible disciplinaries and things like that by just having good policies in place and communicating these policies through the business.
And all of that conflict is such a waste of time and unnecessary, isn't
it? And money. It's a waste of money, really. And so if anything, you know, every minute you lose on this, you know, trying to clarify who's done what, and it's wasted money and time. Right, so what's next?
Coordinating. Now, coordinating is when you allocate the work to people. Who does what? When do they do it? What happens when they're not there to do? People have holidays.
Yeah.
You know, it's when everybody sits down to treat their first patient and they find that the compressor isn't on because the person that normally does this is on holiday. But if as part of the commanding you've got a very clear handing over, delegating when you're on holiday thing, then that will be coordinated, and the person that's going on holiday will say to somebody who's not going on holiday, just so you remember, I'm not here to do that, will you do it?
Yeah.
You know, and that isn't something that the managers should necessarily have to be involved in the first line. Obviously, they'll be involved, and it would matter that they're aware of it. But if the staff are so motivated, they're so in tune with their job that they don't need to be reminded, That's good, isn't it?
Well, staff meetings, you could say, oh, this person is on holiday, so the next people obviously know these tasks won't be done. Please make sure that, whoever is nominated to be deputy.
That's right.
Continue.
Absolutely. And the team will work smoothly, irrespective of who's there and who's not there. And also, if somebody's off sick as well, maybe you haven't got time to plan then, but it would be very obvious to the person that had done it previously that if that person's not there, that you do that, rather than having to have the embarrassment of finding that the...
Would you say it's sensible to actually do the good delegation, good communication for the practice manager? Because all we can see is like, oh, this person never turned up, and now the team, they don't know what to do, things go wrong. So if you have that communication right, then practice manager can just sit back and say, actually, we've got everything under control, or we've got this happening, but now that's what's going to happen. We've got this contingency plan for this sort of thing. So plan ahead.
Yeah, you give people the permissions to use their brains, and they will, and it'll mean that people think, and when people think, they think about the things that they need to do and make things happen. Controlling is where you look at what's happening and you think, okay, am I happy with this? Is this a result that I can think, this is exactly what I want? Or you're thinking to yourself, well, this person is sort of taking over and perhaps their interests aren't the best interest. It's really about looking at things that are happening and making sure that you have got control over the management of something. Very important to control the management of staff, particularly when you've got conflict, which we'll talk about.
Have to start early with that one,
And then monitoring, auditing, all the things that you have to do to your policies, all the things that you do to your working instructions, they'll change.
Yeah.
You'll use new products, you'll have new equipment, different people do things, regulations will change, Do your policies, do your working instructions, does the way that work's coordinated, does it match that? And that's the monitoring.
And I think CQC is very hot on that now these days, looking at making sure that everything is site-specific, not just generic. Because people tend to go and just download generic documents, but whatever you do, just read through it, amend it accordingly to your business.
Absolutely. A really good policy will be recorded each time that you make a change to it. What you did and why you did it. And there are very easy ways to do that with on the computer with the referencing tool. So if you put a particular procedure and then you put a number 1 and then it takes you to the bottom of the page and you might put updated on a particular date for a particular reason. Now, the policies that staff will see won't have all of that in, but your master copy that shows the history of the policy, that's there, and that would be absolutely fabulous.
Well, with technology, I can think of multiple apps that could be used. Google Drive, it's got amazing apps that you can incorporate in that, and actually do on mobile phone devices. You can do reviews very quickly, but again, that's another presentation for a couple of hours, I think. Techie bits. I love technology, so I sometimes when I hear people talking about issues they got with documents, I'm more than happy to help because I know the solutions. I love solutions. Coming from engineering backgrounds, there's no problem. There's solutions.
So, just to sum up what we've said so far, we've got to see the bigger picture. That is the planning. You've got to start with the end in mind. The planning. Considered what is required to secure the end results. It's the rest of it. And if somewhere along the way something isn't as you think it should be, then you can pick out the part of the process that needs strengthening.
Adjust it,
Perfect. Now, we're skipping a little bit over now to think about some of the things that you might actually be doing. So we're really getting practical now. We're not talking in concepts, we're talking in doing. Now, here we have a practice with an induction process that is not particularly structured. They haven't started with the end in mind, they haven't organised it, they haven't controlled it, they haven't got any instructions for it. So basically they're really pleased because they've got a new dental nurse. She's coming from another practice that's a really big award-winning practice, And so the partners are all, wow, she's going to bring
got this amazing
so
staff
much.
joining.
Oh, this is going to be fabulous. But think about how that might affect the other staff in the practice who think that somebody's going to come and steal their thunder.
Yeah.
People that have worked there for years and years and years.
Mm.
And, you know, having this real enthusiasm for this new person is great, but...
Yeah, obviously think about your existing people.
We've got people here, haven't we?
Yeah.
And as much as she may be fabulous and have worked in a practice with a wonderful attitude and fantastic systems, she doesn't know the miniature of what happens in that practice, about which lab particular work goes to, about where things are stored, about just those practical things.
Let's be honest, if you're an amazing person, you might be very good at what you do, or you go to new work environment, it could be different building, you know, a different layout of the building. You will have to rely on people who've been there for years to actually give you, oh, actually, when we do this, that's what happens, that's what we'll do here. And then maybe you can improve on that, but if you're amazing, you can make suggestions, but I think praise your staff that you've got first before you start praising new people coming in.
Feel secure. Because in this particular case study, they were, well, she's not that amazing if she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be fair, nobody would know that unless they were told the things that she was asking.
Yeah.
So that's what your induction does.
Yeah. Good induction to the business.
Absolutely. And also, great idea to pair them up with a mentor.
That's right, yeah.
Because you'll have people in the practice who you're not thrilled with. That's putting it nicely.
Yeah.
And what you wouldn't particularly want to do is have their attitudes and their bad behaviours transferred into the new person.
True, yeah.
So if that person that you're not thrilled with is the one they're asking questions to, then you could probably find that that new member of staff is very soon not the member of staff you hope they might be. Yeah. Whereas if you mentor them, you pair them up and say, if you've got practical questions, first of all, we'll take you through an induction process. Yeah. Then we'll give you written instructions so that you think, oh, you couldn't remember that. Never mind, it's in the staff manual.
Yeah.
You can look to that. And then if you're getting difficulties, you go to the person who's been appointed as your mentor. And it may be the sort of difficulties that you've got a particular grumpy member of staff that everybody has a difficulty with.
Yeah.
And the new person is thinking, oh, well, what do I do about this? You know, every time I speak to this person, she's really offish, or she blows hot and cold, and I'm not happy. I wonder if she's like this with other people. But if you've got someone that's appointed as your mentor, then that is the sort of conversation you would expect to have with them.
Yeah, you know, you can have a one-to-one meeting and
confidence, and it's not being unpleasant and sort of starting off a job with a negative thing. It's actually saying, this is a difficulty for me. How have you dealt with this sort of difficulty in this practice?
Exactly.
So the whole induction thing, if it's properly planned, and it's not a one-day wonder.
No, exactly. It's a process.
It's a process. And the process should move all the way up to the first appraisal. So it could be almost a 6-month process where there is new things being added in. Obviously, there's a lot less to go in after they've been there a couple of weeks. But actually, it's what you're taking out from the appraisal process, so that you're actually, from the induction process, what you're actually doing is measuring what's good in your practice through the eyes of a new person.
Exactly, brand new person in your business, they can probably tell you what they see. So very often you do stuff yourself, and you think it's great and amazing, and then someone else will look at it and say, actually, that could be done better. Yeah.
And this induction process gives you the opportunity to. It's another Kaizen, really, isn't it?
It's Kaizen all the way. See, engineering, just forget dentistry, CQC, just go do engineering training.
So that induction then needs policies and procedures made available, and preferably not on a paper version, actually electronically, because when you update policies and procedures on paper, you know, have people got the most up-to-date version when they consult them. So having them electronically,
it's easier.
More likely to. Team protocols, that is, you know, what are the things that people expect from one another? And this is a mentor thing.
Mm-hmm.
Many practices have really dyed in the wood ways of doing things that only they know about. Probably got their own cup, they've got their own seat in the staff room.
Yeah.
And a new person comes along and quite innocently goes and sits in somebody's seat. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's a tragedy happening. It'll be murder.
And, you know, if you imagine this, if you're somebody that's in a relationship with somebody and it's bedtime and you sort of do all your bedtime, getting ready for bed things, and then instead of getting into your side of the bed without saying a thing, you just go and sit in there, get into their side of the bed.
Yeah, I can imagine what will happen to me if I do that to my wife.
And you know, this is a playful thing, really, but have a try at it and see, because you'll know then how it would feel to a new person in the practice if what they did in all innocence, obviously you're not doing it in innocence, you're doing as an experiment. But
no, this is actually a good experiment because. Again, I'm sure something good will come out of it if you just try to do a simple thing like that, swap the sides of the bed.
Yeah. Well, don't do it after you've had a row, but you know, do it while things are good between you, and just imagine how that person's feeling. It's just confusing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they'll probably say, "What you doing?" basically, but ultimately things aren't going in the way that they expected, and it feels.
Well, how would you feel if you're my neighbour and I walk into your garden without permission? You know, that's exactly the same thing. You know,
that's the similarities there, isn't there?
Yeah, so it's just walking into your personal space. So everyone's got different boundaries, so you need to work them out between the two.
So if there's somebody that's been appointed as your mentor, they would feel that they had the right to say to you, "Oh, I wouldn't sit there because it's boss's chair."
Yeah, the boss's chair, probably leather one, big fat chair. So yeah, everyone knows it's boss's chair most of the time. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's good to have a mentor that will actually point out the little things that will make a massive impact on the entire team.
Yeah, it does. It's a dominoes effect, really. It's a small thing, but it can get big.
Yeah.
Working instructions, we've already talked about. You know, this is the way that this needs to be done. And when you can have a checklist to say, done it, done it, done it, then the job's been done the way that it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And some jobs must be done that way because they are...
Standard operating procedures, again. My lovely engineering term. Standard operating procedures. Good.
How to look after equipment, it's different from practice to practice.
Yeah.
You know, what do we use to clean this with? What do we do to clean that with? Who does what, where, when and why? You know, all of that needs to be very clear to people from the beginning. And then the whole environment, from environmental cleaning. I know quite a few practices, the nurses do some of the environmental cleaning as well. I know I certainly have worked in practices where we've had to wipe down all the skirting boards in the waiting room. So hopefully we've moved on from that in those practices.
Yeah.
But I think there still will be practices where some of the environmental cleaning goes on by the clinical staff. But, you know, basically the whole point of an induction is to create productive working relationships. People that know what to expect from one another and they're happy to work in a way that supports other people. That means you get a motivated performance. The motivation is to prolong the productive relationship. That's a good motivation when you're working with people. People are communicating well because they know who they can communicate with. They know where they can get information from. They can share the vision.
I think I would add maybe one thing to that. For people who are very money-orientated practice managers or owners thinking, so if you don't do these things right, you're losing time. If you're losing time, you're losing money. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
Time is money. Time is money key. Don't have time. You know, we very often see on the group saying we don't have enough time to do these things. Standardize things. Make sure everyone is doing the most efficient way, and then go again. PDCA cycle. Make sure you do everything in the most efficient way. Then you're not losing time. Therefore, you're keeping the money in your pocket.
And everybody should be doing that, not just the management, you know. And then when everyone thinks that way, things get better.
Yeah.
So the whole commanding thing there comes into it. So we've got some coaching. Now, there's a difference between mentoring and coaching. I'm sure everybody already knows that. But the mentoring is so much about the thoughts and the feelings and are we sitting in the right chair, the protocols. What did you do when that happened? I've got a problem with such and such. What would you do about it? Mentoring approach. Whereas the management is much more about coaching. It's about setting the standards, setting the benchmark, and then enabling people to reach it.
Being that top person making the executive decisions and showing the authority. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the person that watches the athlete with a stopwatch and tells them what they can eat, and when they go to bed and things. Well, we're not that extreme.
No, not in dentistry, no.
But the coaching is still basically about setting the benchmark and helping people to meet it. So it's about taking charge. It's about being confident, because if a manager isn't confident, they're going to get
quickly.
The floor's going to be wiped with them.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on results, so knowing what results you want, measuring the results that you're getting, and when they're the results you want, celebrate, really and truly. If you're doing something fabulous, recognise it and thank people
about
for it.
the being decisive as well. A lady called Karen Brady. You probably know Karen Brady.
Karen Brady, yeah.
Very, very strong lady. I like the way she obviously does the business, and she's harsh but fair. I think that's the management style people should be adopting.
Should aspire to, yeah.
Yeah. If people do the good things, just do whatever you need to do. If they do bad things, be harsh but fair, basically.
Let them know.
Let them know. Yeah. Don't sit on it.
Well, you've been doing that for years and years and years, and I've never been happy with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It puts me in mind of a dentist who had a nurse walk into his treatment room and put a cup of coffee on the top of a big pile of cards. Don't even start me on what's wrong with that. But ultimately, the cup of coffee tipped over, went all over the working surface, all over the cards, all over anything that was on there. And the dentist was, "Get out! Just get out." Now, this ended up at tribunal. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not.
But when we got to the tribunal, apparently this nurse had been a nightmare for a long time. She never gets there on time. Right. She's disruptive. Sometimes her workwear looks dirty and unshevelled. She's actually been stopped from leaving the practice in her workwear during the lunch hour.
Right.
This particular member of staff was a nightmare. But nobody had said anything to her about how bad everything that she was doing was in comparison to what she should be doing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you got to that point where...
Tipping point.
He just couldn't hold it in.
Yeah.
But he was wrong.
He was wrong, yeah. I would agree he was wrong.
He was right, but the practice was wrong. So, all of this sort of thing that we're talking about now enables you to pick up on the little things. And the first time that she looks as though a workwear actually she shouldn't be wearing because it's not clean enough, it's picked up on. And then the next time she puts on something, she looks at it and she thinks, well, that's not very clean. I'm going to change that, otherwise they'll tell me to.
Yeah.
So, it is really all about this commanding aspect. But I know we're getting quite short on time now, but what I do want to do is talk a little bit about this Bruce Tupman thing.
Right, okay.
Now, Bruce Tupman looked at the way that people work together in teams.
Right. And
remembering that what we're talking about is staff development and enabling people to do the best that they can for the practice. You won't do better than this particular theory because it actually tracks the way that relationships are formed in working groups.
Right, okay.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about appraisals. We're going to talk a little bit more now in the forming stage. So when people come together for the first time in a work situation, the sorts of conversations they'll have are very standard. And they'll be asking things like, oh, how was your journey? All the sort of things you might ask a patient, really.
Yeah, very generic questions.
And then they'll get on to, well, where have you worked before?
Yeah.
What have you done at those practices? What they're doing is they're gathering information so that they can make a decision.
Yeah.
Do they like this person? Do they want to form an alliance, a working alliance with this person?
Yeah.
Or is this somebody
is that friends or friends?
Yeah. Is it a threat? Yes. Yeah. Those are all the questions that happen within the forming stage.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way process. Because sometimes the people that come along to do a first day in the job go home at lunchtime and don't come back again.
True, I've seen that happening.
The answers to the questions in the forming stage have red-lighted them.
Yeah.
And they thought,
obviously realise what's going on.
What's going on here? This isn't what they told me at the interview. And I've so often heard people say, well, I came to the interview and they said this, this and this. It's not like that, really.
Yeah.
So this first stage of the team formation is an information gathering thing. And people are going to use that information then. in order to either go forward, to run for hills, or to go forwards. Now, how they go forwards will be into what we call the storming stage. Now, the storming stage can be very, very subdued, or it can be absolutely in your face.
Yeah.
It's about personalities, I guess, in certain ways, because here, this is where people are going to use the information gathered from forming to either use it against somebody or with somebody. Yeah. And here, at this stage, people may choose to make an alliance. There may be a sort of a coalition of people against the new person.
Yeah, I've seen that happening too.
Within the team.
Within the teams, yeah.
There could be a coalition of the people in the team and the new person against the management.
Yeah.
Now, if these things happen in an over-the-board and out in the open way, they can be dealt with. But so often they're under the surface.
Yeah.
And because they're under the surface, they're never actually addressed. People think, oh, it will go away.
Well, they're only addressed when...
they're addressed when they come...
Yeah.
And when they come like that, it's because there's been some sort of extra pressure. And it's the worst time to be dealing with an eruption of
the last thing you want to deal with.
Yeah. So storming is something that you can deal with through the induction, because it's by asking people what are their thoughts and feelings. How did you feel when? And not just the new person, the rest of the people in the team as well.
Yeah.
Gather that information. The good news about storming is that once it's dealt with properly, you can move on. The bad thing about storming is that you can go back to it from any stage of the process. If something upsets the apple cart, you can go back to storming.
True.
So again, it's really important that management recognise when their team is storming, because to ignore that is to store up a problem for the future, and to deal with it is to avoid that from happening. So the storming is a stage that you might not even notice if people aren't being honest about it. But look for it. Look for the signs and symptoms. Not just what they say, but actually read their body language and look at the things that they do, and whether they stay in during the lunchtime and socialise with people, or whether they're off and away.
Yeah.
You know, all of those sorts of things, just watch it, monitor it. Because once you've got past that, you can start to norm. And the norming is when you're looking for ways of creating new working patterns that work for everybody.
Yeah.
Norming is about working with people in groups for mutual benefit rather than to exclude people, as it is in the storming stage. So it's where people come together into new working processes, which will eventually lead them to be at the performing stage. And the performing stage is that really comfortable stage where you know the person you're working with, you know what they need from you, you know how to provide what they want from you, and what they want from you, you're able to provide. You've got that sort of working relationship. You've worked with somebody for years and years and years. It becomes very easy, much easier than when somebody's new.
Yeah, that's
the ideal scenario. That's what you're aiming for. But, of course, life changes.
Yeah.
And at some point, somebody's going to leave, and that's when you go through the journey. It's a sort of a grieving of the old comfortable ways, those old comfy shoes that you've been absolutely in love with, that finally, that's it.
They need to come
no
off.
more. No more. And the whole team has to go through this whole process again, because somebody else is going to join and there's going to be the forming stage.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I think this is such a useful thing to be aware of is that you can look at a group, and if you're a little bit uneasy about the way that your team are working, where are they?
Where are they? Yeah, at what stage you are. Yeah.
And at each of those stages, there's things that a manager can do to move them forward to the next stage.
Yeah.
You know, a new person comes, actually give them time to sit and talk to everybody.
Yeah.
Don't expect them to do it between patients and whatever. Invite the new person in, have a lunchtime with them before they start. Let them ask the questions. Make it clear that, as a team, we're interested in one another. Not for the wrong reasons, but because we want to welcome you into our team, and we want to know.
During our staff meeting, maybe when we've got donuts sitting, pizza or whatever, just everyone is relaxed stage, and you're not necessarily dealing with patients, so you can get to know them, and they get to know you a bit as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the stormy stage, you can actually find out, what is a real problem here. Not what people are saying is the problem, the real problem.
Yeah.
and do something about it. The Norman people are starting to work together. Give them ways and that they can accelerate that. Let them try things out. That particularly groups of nurses. If you've got a group of nurses and a lead dental nurse, give them opportunities, skip quality circles, sit and talk about things. That's going to help to norm the group.
Yeah, quality circles. That's right. Teamwork. That will encourage teamwork.
Absolutely. And when people are performing, recognise that they're doing a fabulous job for the practice.
The funny thing is, when you do quality circle properly, that will usually result in increased revenue, profit, because you're improving the process. So you probably, as a practice owner, will have money there in the budget from that improvement to reward people for the good job they done for you. So yeah. Right. What's next? We got something else coming up now.
Yeah. So really, it's all about controlling and monitoring. It's about knowing what success looks like.
Yeah.
And when you get it,
recognizing.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Really enjoy it. There's so many people that are doing fabulous stuff, but they never take the time to step back and think.
And enjoy it, yeah.
That is quite an achievement.
Yeah. I would agree with that, yeah. Because we all, obviously the pace, we all work hard every day and then don't even recognise that we're actually achieving something great sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, carry on. Yeah. We don't have to stick to an hour, we can carry on.
Okay, if you're happy to do that, we will
let's
carry on.
Finish the presentation. I want the members of the groups and then whoever's going to be watching that later to get the full benefit of this presentation, because it's got a lot of good information there. So yeah.
So what we do need to do then, in all parts of staff management, is to review and measure. Because how can you recognise that you're successful unless you're doing that? So, measure the activities. Are the things that we do as good as they can be? Look at the tasks and the objectives. Do they match? And look at your achievements one by one, which is exactly what we've just been talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always concentrate on hard facts.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is a place for the subjective measures of whether people are happy and whether people like things, but it's a business, and you do have to look at the hard facts of the things that you're doing. Now, those hard facts will be in that management process when you're setting your organisation there. Yeah. They'll be in your policies, won't they? So it's a bit of a tick box mentality, perhaps, but it's important to avoid conjecture or anecdotal or non-specific opinions, because it's so difficult for people to protect themselves from other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem with an appraisal, really. If that appraisal isn't built on something rock solid, like a job description, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, when somebody joins your practice, you have a contract with them, and that contract is that they will fulfil a job description that you've agreed with them.
Yeah.
If you were to appraise them on anything other than that, you're only going to be thinking about what you like, what they like, or what other people like or dislike, rather than the extent to which the things in their job description have been performed to the benchmark set by the practice.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what an appraisal is about. And that's why people can find it quite difficult to appraise if they're only just basing it on what they think, what they like, what they dislike.
Yeah.
So that review and measure process has got to be really quite a rigid process that the manager performs and shares with that person. And also the person should be giving feedback. It should always be a two-way process.
Yeah.
That old-fashioned thing, you've got one mouth and two ears, and that should be the ratio, particularly in an appraisal. So those job descriptions are really important. How can a member of staff perform the way that you want them to perform if that performance is implied?
Right.
Implicit performance is very difficult for people to meet. Explicit performance is a job description.
Job description telling you what you're meant to be doing. Yeah.
So that job description is probably one of the most important documents between you and the member of staff that you want, not the one that comes along and is a bit confused exactly about what's wanted from them. The other thing about job descriptions is they do need to be managed, because people will tend to either drop bits of it, or other people will tend to take over bits of other people's job descriptions. You may well have one person in your practice who's very well-meaning, a very busy person that does their own job and a bit of somebody else's, and a bit of another somebody else's.
Yeah, and they become too busy.
They become absolutely overworked. And something goes wrong, well, it does when you're overworked, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they get blamed because they're the one that did it. But it was never their job. And they feel really resentful about that. That's so unfair.
Well, it's unfair because they do an extra base. They wanted to do something good, but not realising they're actually not doing anything good by
doing that. Absolutely. Of course, the other thing that they might decide is, well, I'm the only one doing any work here. I'm going to go and work somewhere else.
Yeah. And you lose good staff.
Not only do you lose good staff, but when they go, the hole that you need to fill is anybody's guess. Yeah. Because it's a bit of this job, it's a bit of that job, it's the job that they agreed to do in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, a big part of an appraisal should be looking at the job description and making sure that what's in the job description is correct and accurate and up to date.
Well, also from that's the base, again, foundations of everything. From there, you can add on to that, and that's when the career progression comes in. You can give people pay raises if they actually take on more responsibilities, and they actually know, I'm taking that new task on, and that's going to be X amount of maybe more money or something in exchange for that. Yeah. So, otherwise, if they do everything, they're thinking, well, what else I need to do to get more money? I've been in that situations. I'm running a business for someone else and thinking, what else do I need to do to be recognised in this business then? Where is the ceiling? Or have I reached the ceiling? Yeah. And that's the problem.
Well, maybe there isn't one really. I mean, as much as you do that,
Exactly, yeah. Well, but where is, absolutely spot on. Yeah.
And that's not a good situation. It may well be also that you take things off somebody because you're giving them something else.
Yeah.
And give it to somebody who's following them along.
Feels bad, to be honest. If someone takes I used to be in that situation when they're like, okay, we're going to take this task off you, pass it to someone else, and you're going to do something different. It's like little baby. You know, once you start looking after something and you take the ownership, losing that is not a good feeling. That was my personal experience. But when you come, once you've done it and you know it was done for good reasons, then it's different. But yeah.
I think there are ways of doing it that perhaps would make somebody feel that it was a progression rather than a punishment.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so what is appraisal then? The whole idea of an appraisal is to help people to be more effective.
Yeah.
That's why it combinates in a personal development plan, because you recognise what your strengths are, and that's wonderful. You celebrate them and you think about how those strengths can be cascaded through the team.
Yeah.
And you think about development areas. What are the things that you're good at, maybe you're very good at, but you could be even better.
Yeah, identifying training needs.
Yeah. Recognising the achievements of staff and managers. And one of the things that I think it's so easy to do is remember all the things throughout the year that were wrong at an appraisal.
Yeah.
Not have made a note of the times that a patient was so praising somebody, or when something went well because of something, that little extra bit that somebody had done. All of these things are just so valuable to remember at an appraisal. So where you're saying, oh, well, do you remember when you were late on that day, and because you were late, blah, 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 and
that's not going to work. Yeah.
It hasn't happened again, but, what are we going to do to make sure it never does? That's a fair enough question, but to refuse to look at what they've done that's fabulous as well, not in mitigation, separately, side by side. That's important, and it's what an appraisal should be about as well. There should never be anything that's brought up in appraisal that the person didn't know about.
True, okay.
And you should never ever appraise somebody if you're doing a disciplinary process with them. Do the disciplinary and then you appraise afterwards, because the two things must never be linked together. give a practice performance related overview. So, tell them how they're fitting in with the practice, how what they do fits in. And that's where it's so important to have a hierarchical diagram, a structure of the practice.
Yeah.
And, use that to show them how what they do enables other people. Reception in particular need that. Because a really good receptionist makes a practice run like a well-oiled machine.
Right. I think there were some good questions in the groups about receptionist role in the practice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they need to be recognised when they're doing a brilliant job. And they need to be trained when what they're doing is disruptive. And appraisal is good for them to take it forward. Obviously, when they do something that's not up to standard, then it's got to be dealt with at the time, not wait for an appraisal. Okay. Identifying opportunities that we said, and then further goals.
Yeah, so smart objectives, smart targets for the next step.
Technique.
Yeah. Been there.
So at their best, an appraisal can be very motivating and rewarding. You can walk out of an appraisal thinking, do you know what?
Yeah.
All that time and effort was so worthwhile. But obviously, if it's done badly,
then the experience, people come out and demotivated.
Is this really what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
And if you do lose a member of staff as a result of a good, properly run appraisal, you're going to lose them anyway.
Yeah.
And it's probably better to lose them calmly in good spirit than because of the build-up of the pressures of all the things that were wrong.
True, yeah. So you want to know about the things that are wrong and fix them. And so they might actually stick around for a bit longer, or they might stay. Or if not, then you would lose them anyway. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So here's an appraisal activity, receptionist.
Right, okay.
Been in the practice for 30 years. So there won't be much she doesn't know about the practice, will there?
Yeah, well, she would know pretty much anything,
She'd know a lot of operational stuff, but would she be up to date with things like consent, confidentiality?
Yeah.
All the things that change, information governance, all the things that you don't get to know about unless you do training.
Yeah.
She might be great with the patient, she might know how to do all the day-to-day stuff, but the things that back it up she may very well not know, but she doesn't recognise that actually. She'll come along to the appraisals and she'll sort of smile and nod and make all the right noises, and the manager's really quite sure about that. That's exactly what she's doing, because next time she has an appraisal, we're in exactly the same position. There's not been any difference. So it's a real difficult one, that is, isn't it?
Mm.
She's refusing really to be engaged in the appraisal process, even though she's not being resistant to it.
Yeah. She's
doing it, but she's not doing it particularly well.
Yeah. Okay.
Question is, what does the manager do about that?
Well, if she's been there for 30 years, then they probably continue the way they did for the last 30 years. But they should do something about it.
I think in the real world, maybe some people might do. But, I mean, it comes down to the fact that an appraisal should follow SMART objectives.
Yeah.
Every appraisal should follow SMART objectives.
So when you come in next time for the same appraisal, I want you to achieve this, and that.
She needs targets. Yeah. She needs to be encouraged. It's quite scary for people that haven't been in formal education for 30 years to be expected to go on a course and do things. And, it's very de-skilling as well during that course and things. And I think there's an important thing that you have to recognise from the person point of view.
Yeah. But
ultimately, from the practice point of view, things like data protection, confidentiality, consent, they're rock solid. And the registered people, the dentist in particular, and if the manager is a GDC registrant, they're answerable for the faults and omissions of somebody who they should have put the training in place for.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it isn't really an option to just think, oh, well, it's Judy.
Yeah.
So how do we prepare people for an appraisal?
Right.
Don't just rock up and say, come on in here, I'm going to do your appraisal now, because that would be really not a particularly helpful way to do it. So you send them a letter, you invite them to an appraisal meeting.
Right.
So we're going to have a meeting on a particular date. This is where we're going to have it. And it's a really good idea not to have it somewhere that you're going to be interrupted.
Yeah.
Some people actually take people out of the practice and they'll have a coffee in the lounge of a really nice hotel.
Yeah, the places are like most of the places, they don't mind you to hold a meeting. They don't charge you for that. You just just have a nice coffee, environment where they can feel comfortable and tell you things that you want them to tell you.
Yeah. Take them away from the cut and thrust of the practice, from the ringing telephones. Obviously,
I think if you do that, you might actually find things that you would never be able to find if you would do that in a practice.
Surely do.
Yeah.
You do every time, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
You send them an appraisal form, which is the questions you're going to cover, and give them a chance to look at it and think about it, so that they're not going to get any shock questions asked.
Yeah.
What do you think is your biggest achievement over the past year? Giving it them there and then on the day, they're like, ooh. Whereas if they know in advance and they think about it and prepare for it, they're going to give you a much more informed answer. Give them a copy of their job description as the copy that you've got that you're going to be measuring their performance to as well. And one of the questions that you'll begin with is saying to them, well, what is there on that you don't no longer do? What is there on that you do more than? What do you do more than what's on there? And the other thing, this might be a bit controversial, but give them a copy of the business plan.
Interesting, yeah.
Now, there'll be two versions of the business plan, obviously. There'll be one for public consumption.
Yeah.
Most of it will be on your website, to be fair, and in the various things that you have to put in a practice publication scheme.
Right. And
then there'll be one with more in confidence information, financial stuff that you wouldn't give to all and sundry. But there should be clarity about the goals of the business, how it aims to reach them, how it treats patients. And so the practice publication scheme should be on your practice notice board. It should be on your website. But these are the sorts of things that need to be talked about during an appraisal as well, because the appraisal is getting people to do those things. So the invitation goes out, you set the venue, you lay out the room in a comfortable way. Don't sit across the table like they've been interviewed in the police station.
Yeah. Lights. Sorry, just messing my phone there. Lights sitting next to you. And
yeah, none of that sort of thing. Pretty much the way that we're sitting here is the way to do it, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, not sort of full on, but enough that you can be comfortable there. Relax the person at the beginning of the meeting. When you know that you're in a meeting where your performance is going to be analysed, that's not a comfortable thing.
Yeah.
So just make sure you've got that relaxation happening. By the end of the meeting, you should have been able to agree an action plan with that person. So it's an action plan in view of the job responsibilities, where the person wants to go with their career.
Yeah.
Some people are just really happy to come into work, do a really good job, go home and be a mother or a father or a friend or a wife or a whatever, and they don't want to particularly rule the world career-wise. That's not their bag.
No.
Whereas other people in the team have got really, really focused. They want to go do a hygienist course. They want to be a specialist orthodontist or whatever. All those sorts of aspirations were different for people.
Exactly.
And they need to be talked about in the appraisal. And then in line with the practice's priorities as well. So again, what we're actually doing is putting together something that is almost like an agreement of how we work together for the future. Clear objectives set that meets each person, using SMART rules. Specific, measurable. I like achievable. Other people would say agreed.
Yeah.
Relevant to the person, to the practice. Some people would say realistic. And time measured. Make sure that whatever you've asked them to do, you're giving them the support to do it.
Yeah, not just, that's what I want you to do, and see you 6 months later on another appraisal. I actually have some stages to it. I would agree with that, yes.
Encourage them to ask for the support that they need as well. But, that support is really, really important. External things, coaching, secondment, actually let them go and work in another practice if you've got one that you're friendly with, or you've got different branches. I know a lot of the big practices now, the corporate practices, have got lots of branches, haven't they?
Yeah, so they can...
And that they'll move people around with them, in terms of their needs. But what about in terms of the needs of the people? If, a particular nurse who would love to take an interest in implants, but they don't do them at her practice.
So just allow them to explore that option somewhere else, I think. Yeah,
loads of, not just the obvious things really, but just drawing from them to create a recipe for that person's development. Make sure you've got really good records. Yeah. Unless you've got a fabulous memory.
Yeah,
and if you have, don't rely on it.
Exactly, yeah. But you can't, without good record, you can't prove anything. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. Make sure all the main points are done. I mean, those records could actually be recorded. You can put them on your iPhone, and it doesn't have to be a written record. Maybe in some cases you get a much more objective record if it's a record of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's worth thinking about. I mean, I personally would prefer things written.
Yeah.
Make sure that the agreed actions are properly recorded, and also make sure however you're planning to follow them up is recorded and people know what they do. Send a copy to people at the end of the meeting. Sometimes when people are applying for courses, perhaps going on to do another dental education course, they may even ask to see a recent appraisal.
Yeah.
Or if you're going for a promotion in a bigger organisation, they might ask to see that. So giving people that copy of their appraisal is really quite an important thing to do. And remember, when you're doing it, it may not just be for your eyes and their eyes. There may be sometimes
someone else
you actually have a third party given the correct permissions to look at that. Okay, in terms of giving feedback at an appraisal, that's probably the thing that a lot of people feel the least comfortable with.
Yeah.
The important thing is, don't give praise or criticism. Give facts.
Yeah.
Don't give a praise sandwich. Oh. Just don't do it. Everybody knows, don't they?
Yeah.
And then, they're waxing lyrical about how wonderful something is. You're thinking, okay, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Come on then, get it out, spit it out. Don't do a praise sandwich. Be actually factual. Because praise or criticism, they're both judgmental, they're subjective, and not particularly helpful. So if praise is a favourable judgment, criticism is an unfavourable judgment. It will be vague. It'll be about the person and not the job, and that's not good. And it will be based on opinions or feelings. That's not what the appraisal's all about.
Yeah.
So be aware of those things when you do. So give specific information. This is what we were asked to do, this is what you've agreed to do, this is what you've done. This is the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Issue focused. It's about the way that you do a particular thing. That's about the person that you are. Very clearly about that. And based on observations.
Right,
not what somebody's told you.
No.
Not feelings.
Your own observations or the paperwork, you obviously, if there was paperwork involved, they filled it in for the past 6 months, something like that. You gather the evidence and go for that look.
Yeah, it's fact.
It's
Absolutely.
facts, yeah.
In that case, you take away praise and criticism and you have recognition of success.
Yeah.
And remedy where things aren't great.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. Okay, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. We all know that though, don't we?
Yeah.
The words themselves aren't necessarily what gives the impression, it's the way that they're said. So be direct, get straight to the point, don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
Avoid using need to. Oh, we need to. What does that mean? We are going to. This is what we are going to do.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Here are some targets and benchmarks that we're going to, how we're going to achieve them. Now, we really need to think about.
Yeah. Well,
I'll do it then.
Just do it. Yeah. Basically, just do it. That's the magic words.
Keep away from yes, buts.
Yeah.
Because it's not the message, is it? The message is this isn't right. Not saying yes, but.
There's no other way. This is one way. Yeah.
However, no. Those sorts of things really sort of give the impression that the appraiser isn't particularly confident and clear, and maybe just a little bit frightened of the appraisee.
Yeah, that's
changes the balance of power. Not a great thing at all. And it says, as it says there, don't believe anything I've said before. The however does particularly. But we're going back to appreciation again. I think if anything is the message of what we're saying today is appreciate.
Yeah.
Say thank you and be appreciative when people are doing a great job, because that'll make them carry on doing a great job.
Exactly. Praise people for good things. That's bottom line. Is it will motivate them. That's for sure.
Now, remedial feedback. There may be something that happens during an appraisal that really puts you on the back foot. Something might be said that you didn't have a clue about. There might be an accusation, and the way that you respond to it could ultimately build into a really big, unpleasant situation.
True, yeah. So
don't ever be afraid to take the ASAR as soon as you're ready. Well, I think I need a little bit of time to think about that. Let me think about it before I give you an answer to that. I hear what you say, I understand. Do some reflective listening. So you're telling me that this and this and this is a fact.
Yes.
I didn't know that, and I need to give it some thought before I come back and give you an answer.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to answer straight away.
You don't have to think on your feet, because that can actually make things worse than they need to be.
Exactly.
Okay. Keep accurate record, particularly when you've been caught on the back foot like that. It may be that in an appraisal you can't reach an agreement with the person.
Right.
Some appraisals there's going to be a level of conflict in. So always be sure that you've got somebody in the background that can be an arbiter. Difficult in small practices, because you don't necessarily want everybody else watching your dirty washing as such. So it's not a great idea that a practice manager and a practice owner does the appraisal together.
Right. Because
if there is any need to go to an arbiter, the owner that hasn't been part of the original appraisal could be the practice owner.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were part of that, then they're excluded from an arbitration process.
True, yeah.
So, it depends on who you're appraising and the level within the team structure. But on the whole, basically, where the practice manager and perhaps a lead from an area, say the senior receptionist, the senior nurse, senior whatever the person is within the practicing within labs as well, I'm sure labs are watching this as well. That's the important thing to do, is to keep somebody that can be your arbiter in the background without going out of the practice.
Okay.
And finally, a word from John Lennon.
John Lennon, yeah.
There are no problems, only solutions.
There are only solutions, yeah, exactly.
And if you've got a structured way of looking at things and you're not so personally involved that there's a lot of emotion rolling around, the chances are you can create the practice you want.
Just think about solutions, that's all I say. Whatever you do, think solutions, not problems. Problems only exist in your head. Or if they exist, you can solve them. That's the way people should be thinking about this thing. So, right, so that's the end of the presentation. Took us a bit longer than an hour, I think, but
yeah, a lot longer than
that. A lot longer. That's fine. The video will be there, guys, for you to enjoy and watch. You don't have to watch it in one go, so don't worry about that. If you have any questions, if you need further training, please contact Glenys. she will be more than happy to answer your questions and just keep posting comments and likes on the video. That would be great.
Yeah, wonderful. Please do.
Yeah, if you can share video, that would be great as well. Just feel free to enjoy it and ask questions. Like I said, thank you very much again for joining. See you all soon. Next presentation we've got on Facebook marketing for dentists, Facebook ads. So there will be Marketing Guru doing that. Derek, I've been on one of his training courses, really good, and I've actually learned something myself as well. And I'm not running a dental practice here, so and then we're going to be talking about CQC by the end of this month. So great, guys. Thank you very much again. See you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening.